Resuming debate, reprise de débat, the honourable member for Cowichan-Malahat Langford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would like to start off by thanking my colleague from Berthier-Mascon. No, Chase.
I really saying her.
But her motion brought in this House today, I think, is incredibly important. And as I start off, I want to give a shout out to the hardworking farmers in my riding of Cowichan-Malahat Langford. For those of the members in this House who don't know, the Cowichan Valley is worded after the First Nations band that lives there, and it's referred to as the warm land. We have a beautiful climate on that part of Vancouver Island, and I am honored to be a part-time farmer myself. My wife and I have a small 3-acre farm, and it's very small scale compared to what some farmers go through, but it does give me a little bit of insight into just how hard farmers work. And I couldn't be more honored to be a member of Parliament that comes from a riding that supports farms, that has a very real link between the people who buy produce and the people who produce it. And when I look at the Liberal government's track record on this, I want to start off with the speech from the throne, because some honourable members have already mentioned that in the speech from the throne there was not one mention of the word agriculture. And that, to me, that signals a big omission. It signals that agriculture does not figure heavily in this government's view of going forward. And following up with that, the budget released on March the 22nd devoted only a scant 2 pages to agriculture. And one of those pages simply mentioned the existing Growing Forward 2 program, which was launched in 2013. So it devoted 1 out of 2 pages to mentioning a program that already exists, and that just doesn't signal to me that there is a serious commitment by this government. Now, I do acknowledge there are Liberal members of Parliament in this House, on Conservatives and the NDP, who do care very deeply about agriculture. And we have heard a lot of passion in this House already, but I think that when it comes down to actual action, that's what ultimately, for me, speaks louder than words. And we have heard the Minister of Agriculture in this House quite a few times. He has said that the government supports supply management, that it understands the importance of compensation, and that he is fully aware of the problem and that they are in discussions with the dairy industry. Well, that's all well and good, but this problem has existed for a number of years now. And with respect to the Liberal MPs who do stand passionately on this issue, I think that after 6 months of being in government, it's time to stop blaming the Conservatives and to actually own up to the problem. I think some Liberal MPs are having trouble distinguishing between the legislative branch of government and the executive branch. Yeah. And the Minister of Agriculture is in charge of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. The Minister of Public Safety is in charge of the CBIA. We have 2 government agencies which have different views on the import of this substance. And I think nothing needs to actually be changed. We're simply asking on this side of the House that the government follow the rules that are already in place. It's a simple request. The Liberals did promise during the election campaign to review the existing standards, rules and practices regarding the import of food products, including dairy proteins, to ensure that they serve the interests of Canadians. And so our motion is simply asking that they conform with that commitment made during the election. Now, I would also like to take some time into taking a closer look at the wording of our motion. Now, Part A of the motion calls on this House to recognize the magnitude of the economic losses to the Canadian Dairy Association, or Canadian dairy producers, from the importation of diafiltered milk from the United States, which totaled $220 million in 2015. So $220 million in just 1 year alone, or an average of $15,000 per producer. Now, it has been said already in this House that by my honourable colleague from Windsor-Tecumseh that diafiltered milk is designed to circumvent Canadian law, because when it comes into Canada, it is imported as a concentrated milk protein, and it is not subject to border fees. However, when producers of cheese use diafiltered milk in their product, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency regards it as the same milk. So it is treated by one agency as milk, but by another agency as not milk. We are simply calling for harmonization of these two views, and that is well within the capacity of the executive level of government, so it is time to stop beating around the bush, to take some action, own up to the problem, and stop blaming the previous government for your issues. There needs to be a minimum percentage of protein used in cheese making source from milk. There are rules and regulations for how we make cheese in this country, but diafiltered milk and milk protein substances are less costly, and they come from heavily subsidized milk. The second part of the motion, it recognizes, we want to recognize that each day of government inaction contributes to the disappearance of a steadily increasing number of family farms across the country. This is very true. For losses of this magnitude, small family farms are the ones that get hit the hardest. It's the big ones that are able to absorb these costs, and that's been a trend in Canada. We have seen the disappearance of the small family farm, and often those are the cornerstone of our communities. They certainly are in my community of Cowichan-Malahat Langford. Not all producers of cheese have access to diafiltered milk, so there's an imbalance there as well. The overall effect of this policy, of not changing it, is that we are using less Canadian milk in our cheese and dairy products. It is not working well for those hardworking farmers, those hardworking dairy farmers across this country. They have an unfair, it's a very unfair regulation if we're not going to be changing it. I don't think, Madam Speaker, that we want to become a country where only the biggest farms are able to survive and that a family business is no longer profitable. The other part of the motion, Part C, recognizes that the entire industry is standing together to call for the problem to be resolved immediately. Now, earlier this year, when I was at the Canadian Dairy Association reception, I noticed a lot of Liberal members of Parliament there. I noticed the Minister of Agriculture, the Parliamentary Secretary. They were all well and good to stand with the association then to get their pictures taken, but they completely ignore what the industry is calling for. Wally Smith, who I am proud to say is from Vancouver Island, really close to where I live, said, and I quote, "All of Canada's dairy farmers speak with one voice on diafiltered milk. We are collectively disappointed with the lack of action on enforcement of the cheese standards. The government does not need to pass a new law or a new regulation, and the solution is simple. The government needs to enforce existing standards." End quote. It's quite simple to me on that. And Part D. Part D of the motion, Madam Speaker, calls upon the government to keep its election promises and honour the commitments made since the start of its mandate, now 6 months long, by immediately enforcing the compositional standards. Now, with respect to the Liberal MPs who moved an amendment to the motion, I agree with my colleague. It would have watered down what we are ultimately trying to do in this motion, and I agree that it was the right choice to disallow that amendment and go with what we are proposing on this side of the House. On a final note, Madam Speaker, I just want to note the importance in Canada of food security, and I would like to acknowledge the incredible work that the NDP has done on this issue for many years. We had Malcolm Allen and also Alex Adamanenko compile an important report called Everybody Eats, Our Vision for a Pan-Canadian Food Strategy, and we recognize the importance of treating food security of agriculture in a holistic approach. We can't be looking at it piecemeal, but we have to see the system as a whole. And that's what's been missing in Canada for many years. We lack a pan-Canadian food strategy. And one of the important parts of that is making sure that the government operates on a level playing field, that the law is equal for everyone and that the laws that are in the books are actually being enforced, because that's what gives producers in Canada peace of mind. It gives them the ability to produce their goods, to know that they have an economic security. So in closing, Madam Speaker, I would just like to say that I couldn't be prouder of this motion coming forward, that I'm glad that the NDP was taking an initiative on this, and that we in this side of the House will be standing with our farmers. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I've been listening to the debate all day between the Conservatives and the NDP, and many of the concerns that they raise. And I can't help, Madam Speaker, but think in terms of this is an issue that was not created by the current government. It was the former government. It was the Conservative government that allowed the issue to fester. And as a result, Madam Speaker, we find ourselves in the situation that we are in today. Back then, I don't recall the NDP raising the issue, and they were in the official opposition capacity. I don't recall the leader of the official opposition then, the current third-party leader, raising it back when it was starting to pick up ground. And where was the concern in regards to the farmers? I think the Government of Canada has been very very forward on the issue, Madam Speaker. And we're saying that, look, we support supply management. We're aware of the situation. We're working towards resolving it. And the question I have for the member is, he had the opportunity to support an amendment. Why did they not support the amendment? Very simple. Why not support it?
The honourable member for Cowichan-Malahat Langford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I already answered that question during the course of my speech. I don't support a watered-down amendment. I think that what our original motion is calling for is the correct one. And with respect to the comments about not handling this issue and that we inherited it from the Conservatives, it reminds me of the old rhyme, Liberal, Tory, same old story. Those parties are great at blaming each other but not taking any responsibility. I don't care what was done in previous parliaments. I'm standing right here and now in the 42nd Parliament trying to take action, but I'm not on the executive branch of government. It's up to them to take action.
Yeah. Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Mégantic.
Honourable member for Mégantic-Lirade. Madam Speaker, I'm very disappointed with the speech by my colleague. His intervention wasn't that bad up to a point, but he must recognize that it wasn't the Conservatives who created diafiltered milk. It wasn't the Conservatives who did something that means that today our producers are stuck with the problem of a product created specifically to circumvent the rules. That's the problem here right now. And when I hear people on the same side of the House as me attacking us instead of the government, they've lost a good opportunity to try to convince the government opposite to take action immediately for our dairy producers. Why doesn't my honourable colleague put those questions to the government? We're no longer in government.
Pat Langford.
Madam Speaker, I will agree with my colleague. We do have to keep focus on the present government, and I am trying to keep my comments to that section. I think I have highlighted many times that 6 months have gone by. It's time to stop looking in the past and living in the present. That's what we're trying to do in the NDP, and we will continue to support that as debate goes on in this House today. Thank you.
Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. L'honorable député.
Honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé.
Passionate speech. I think there's been a lot of debate, great debate in the House today. I'm very happy we're having it, but I think farmers need action. They need action now. They're tired of promises. They're tired of talking about consultation and work that's being done. We all know the solution. It's not going to cost anything. It just means that the government has to do their job. I'm sorry. You guys have to stand up for Canadian farmers and make sure that they have a livelihood and a future. So I was wondering if my honourable member could talk about the importance of the government actually working and standing up for Canadian farmers, and it's something that they have to do.
Remind the member she's to address her questions to the chair and not you as the government. The honourable member for Cowichan-Malahat Langford, a very brief answer, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for the question. She knows very well she's done an excellent job on this file, and she's asked a number of questions to the Minister of Agriculture on this, but the answers we get are completely unacceptable. And there's no ownership of taking responsibility that no laws need to be changed, no regulations need to be changed. We just simply need to follow the laws that are in existence on the book. And we're just looking for the government side to own up to the problem, fulfill its mandate, and work on behalf of Canadian agricultural producers. Thank you.